Inside L.A. County Jail, America's largest jail system exposed. Los Angeles sleeps under a glow of streetlights, palm trees swaying over freeways that never truly rest. But beneath the city of celebrity, ambition, and sunshine is a system so large, so powerful, it quietly rivals entire towns. This is L.A. County Jail, not one building, but a massive network of facilities that, together, form the largest jail system in the United States. On any given day, tens of thousands of human lives pass through its steel doors. Some will stay for hours, some for months, some will leave changed forever. This is not a place reserved only for convicted. Inside these walls are people awaiting trial, people who can't afford bail, people struggling with mental illness, people accused but not proven guilty. It is a system designed for containment, but over decades, it has become something else, a pressure chamber where power, neglect, fear, and survival collide. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy true crime stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. A warning from the inside. Former inmates have called L.A. County Jail a city within a city. Former deputies have called it impossible to control. And civil rights attorneys have called it a constitutional crisis hidden in plain sight. Over the years, this jail system has been investigated by journalists, sued by families, scrutinized by federal authorities, and shaken by scandals that refuse to stay buried. Allegations of corruption, deputy gangs operating inside the walls, brutal failures in mental health care, and incidents so disturbing they force a nation to look directly at a system many prefer to ignore. Tonight, we are going inside L.A. County Jail, not to sensationalize it, not to exaggerate it, but to tell its real story, drawn from documented events, court records, official reports, and first-hand accounts. What you're about to hear happened in one of the most powerful justice systems on earth, and its consequences are still unfolding. The birth of a giant. L.A. County Jail wasn't built all at once. It grew the same way Los Angeles did. Fast, wide, and without a clear plan for future. As the county's population exploded to the 20th century, so did arrests. What began as modest detention centers evolved into massive facilities like Men's Central Jail, Twin Towers Correctional Facility, and others spread across the county. By the early 2000s, the system had reached a staggering scale. On paper, it was meant to process people quickly, in and out, justice moving forward. In reality, overcrowding became routine. Cells designed for a few people held many more. Resources thinned, stress increased, and the jail quietly became one of the largest de facto mental health institutions in America, housing thousands of people with serious psychological conditions, a role it was never designed to handle. This wasn't just a logistical problem. It was the beginning of a crisis. Men's Central Jail, the core of the storm. If L.A. County Jail has a heart, it is Men's Central Jail. Towering, aging, and infamous, it has long been described as one of the most troubled jail facilities in the United States. Built decades ago, Men's Central Jail was never updated to match the population it would eventually hold. Its layout, long corridors, tight tiers, limited visibility, created an environment where supervision was difficult and tension was constant. Over time, complaints began to pile up. Former inmates spoke of fear, not just of other inmates, but of unpredictability. Lawsuits alleged excessive force. Journalists uncovered patterns that suggested problems weren't isolated incidents, but part of something deeper and more systemic. And the more the jail expanded, the harder it became control. The mental health collapse. By the late 2000s, a disturbing reality became impossible to ignore. Thousands of people inside L.A. County Jail were living with serious mental illness, many of them untreated or improperly cared for. Twin Towers Correctional Facility was built to help solve this problem, a modern complex intended to centralize medical and mental health care. But intention collided with reality. Staffing shortages, overcrowding, and inadequate training meant care often fell short. Federal investigations later found patterns of neglect, not isolated mistakes, but systemic failures. People in crisis waited too long for help. Symptoms escalated. and the jail environment itself often made conditions worse. This wasn't just about policy failure. It was about human cost. The deputy gang allegations. Then came one of the most explosive chapters in the jail's history. Allegations of deputy gangs operating inside L.A. County Jail. Investigations and court testimony describe groups of deputies accused of forming secret cliques, complete with symbols and initiation rituals. These groups were alleged to exert control over certain housing units, influencing behavior, enforcement, and discipline. The accusations shocked the public. The idea that organized groups within law enforcement could operate unchecked inside the nation's largest jail raised terrifying questions. Who was really in control, and who was being protected? Some deputies spoke out. Others stayed silent. The walls of the jail seemed to close tighter as the truth struggled to surface. When the federal government stepped in, eventually, the scale of the allegations and the volume of lawsuits drew the attention of the federal government. Investigations into civil rights violations, use of force, and obstruction of justice followed. At one point, senior members of the sheriff's department were accused of interfering with federal inquiries related to abuse inside the jail system. The message this sent was chilling. The problem wasn't just happening inside cells. It might have reached the highest levels of command. Trust in the system eroded. Public confidence wavered. And for the people locked inside the jail, daily life continued under a cloud of uncertainty, fear, and frustration. Life inside the largest jail system. For the average person inside L.A. County Jail, life is defined by waiting. Waiting for court dates. Waiting for medical care. Waiting to find out whether they'll be released or transferred. Days blur together under fluorescent lights. Noise never fully fades. Tension simmers constantly. And for many, the psychological weight is heavier than the physical confinement. This isn't a prison sentence. For most detainees, guilt or innocence hasn't even been decided. And yet, the experience can mark them for life. A system at a crossroads. Over the past decade, calls for reform have grown louder. Plans to close men's central jail. Proposals for mental health diversion. Promises of transparency and accountability. But change moves slowly inside systems this large. And for every announcement, critics ask the same question. Is this real reform or just another delay? Because while policies are debated in offices far away, the reality inside the jail continues. Day after day, cell by cell, life by life. The incidents that forced the nation to look. For years, what happened inside L.A. County Jail rarely reached the outside world. Complaints were filed quietly. Families grieved privately. But then, patterns began to emerge, and they were impossible to dismiss. Investigative journalists uncovered records showing repeated incidents involving use of force. Surveillance footage, when it existed, sometimes contradicted official reports. In some cases, video showed encounters escalating far faster than policies allowed. These weren't isolated mistakes happening once in a while. According to federal findings, similar incidents were occurring again and again across different facilities, under different supervisors. What made it worse was the silence that followed. Internal reviews often cleared deputies of wrongdoing. Whistleblowers later described a culture where reporting misconduct could cost you your career. Inside the largest jail system in the country, accountability felt distant, almost theoretical. The hidden world of pretrial detainees. One of the most misunderstood truths about L.A. County Jail is who actually fills its cells. A large percentage of people inside are not serving sentences. They are pretrial detainees, legally presumed innocent, but locked inside because they cannot afford bail or are awaiting court proceedings. For them, time inside the jail can be devastating. Jobs are lost. Families fracture. Mental health deteriorates. Some are held for minor charges, yet experience months of confinement in a system designed for control, not care. Civil rights groups argue that the jail had become a holding facility for poverty itself, where freedom sometimes depended less on guilt and more on money. And in a place as overwhelming as L.A. County Jail, even short stays could leave lasting scars. Scene 12, when mental illness and incarceration collide. Twin Towers Correctional Facility was meant to be the answer, a medical-focused jail designed to handle the county's growing mental health crisis. Instead, It became a symbol of just how broken the system was. Federal monitors later documented people in severe psychological distress being confined for long periods without appropriate care. Treatment plans were delayed. Appointments were missed. Crisis response sometimes came too late. Deputies were not mental health professionals, yet they were often placed in positions where they had to manage people in crisis with limited tools and overwhelming caseloads. The result was predictable and tragic. A jail environment intensified symptoms instead of stabilizing them. Critics called it a failure of policy. Advocates called it a failure of humanity. Deaths that raised unanswered questions. Over the years, deaths inside L.A. County Jail sparked public outrage and lawsuits. Families demanded answers. Investigations followed. In some cases, causes of death were ruled natural. In others, questions lingered about delays in medical care, supervision failures, or policy violations. Each case followed a familiar pattern: shock, statements, internal reviews, and promises of change. But to families watching from the outside, the pattern felt endless and unresolved. The jail system insisted reforms were underway. Critics countered that without fundamental structural change, tragedies would continue to repeat themselves. The deputy code of silence. As scrutiny increased, attention returned to the alleged culture inside the sheriff's department. Former deputies testified that speaking out against misconduct often meant isolation, retaliation, or forced transfers. Court documents describe an environment where loyalty was valued over transparency, where reporting a colleague could brand you as unreliable or worse. This unspoken code didn't appear in any policy manual, but according to multiple accounts, it was deeply understood. For reform to succeed, investigators argued, this culture would need to be dismantled. But dismantling a culture is far harder than changing a rule. Federal oversight and a moment of reckoning. When the U.S. Department of Justice issued its findings, the conclusions were blunt: patterns of excessive force, inadequate mental health care, failures in oversight. The report described conditions that violated constitutional protections. For L.A. County, this was a moment of reckoning. The largest jail system in the nation was now under the microscope of the federal government, and the world was watching. Officials promised reform. New training programs were announced. Leadership changes followed. But history had taught the public to be skeptical. The plan to close Men's Central Jail. One proposal stood out above all others: closing Men's Central Jail entirely. The plan was ambitious. Replace the aging facility with alternatives focused on treatment rather than punishment. Expand mental health diversion programs. Reduce incarceration for nonviolent offenses. Supporters saw hope. Critics saw risk. And inside the jail, daily life went on as usual, uncertainty hanging in the air. Closing a building is simple. Rebuilding a system is not. Life after release. For those who make it out, L.A. County Jail doesn't always stay behind. Former detainees described lingering anxiety, sleep disturbances, and difficulty trusting authority. Some struggled to rebuild their lives. Others returned, trapped in cycles of arrest and release. The jail wasn't just a place people passed through. For many, it became a turning point for better or worse. And this raised a troubling question. Was the system preventing harm or quietly creating more of it? A system too big to fail or too big to fix. With tens of thousands of people moving through it every year, L.A. County Jail operates on a scale few institutions can match. Any change affects budgets, staffing, courts, and communities far beyond its walls. Some believe reform is finally taking hold. Others believe the system is simply too large, too entrenched to truly transform. The truth may lie somewhere between, suspended in a struggle that has lasted decades and shows no sign of ending soon. The question that remains: L.A. County Jail was built to hold people. Over time, it came to hold problems society didn't know how to solve: mental illness, inequality, addiction, and systemic failure. The question is no longer whether the system is flawed. That much is clear. The real question is this: if the largest jail system in America can't protect the rights and dignity of the people inside it, what does that say about the justice system as a whole? Reform on paper, reality on the floor. As pressure intensified, LA County officials began rolling out reform plans at a rapid pace. New policies were drafted. Oversight committees were formed. Training programs were rewritten with language emphasizing de-escalation, constitutional policing, and mental health awareness. On paper, the changes looked sweeping. But inside the jail, deputies and detainees alike described a gap between policy and practice. Staffing shortages meant overcrowded units remained difficult to supervise. Burnout was widespread. New rules existed, but enforcing them consistently inside one of the largest jail systems in the world proved far more complicated than announcing them at a press conference. Reform, it seemed, had entered the building, but it had not yet reached every cell. The sheriff, the department, and the power struggle. Leadership battles within the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department became public and deeply political. Elected sheriffs, oversight boards, and county supervisors clashed over authority, responsibility, and blame. Some leaders promised transparency. Others resisted external oversight, arguing that interference weakened morale and made the job more dangerous. Internal memos leaked. Public hearings grew tense. Behind the scenes, a fundamental struggle played out. Who controls the largest jail system in America, and who answers when it fails? This power struggle slowed reform, fractured trust, and reinforced a reality that detainees already knew well. Decisions about their lives were being debated far above them, far away from their daily reality. The deputies under pressure. Not every person working inside LA County Jail was a villain. That truth complicated everything. Many deputies entered the job believing they were there to serve, protect, and keep order. But the scale of the jail, the intensity of the environment, and the lack of resources took their toll. Mandatory overtime became common. Stress followed them home. Some deputies spoke openly about feeling unsupported, asked to manage volatile situations without enough training or backup. Others admitted the environment rewarded toughness over empathy. And in a place where fear shaped daily decisions, the line between control and excess force could blur quickly. Understanding the jail meant understanding this tension, a system straining everyone inside it, not just the people behind bars. The lawsuits that would not go away. Even as reforms were announced, lawsuits continued to flood the county. Families of those who died inside the jail alleged negligence. Former detainees described lasting physical and psychological damage. Court settlements cost the county millions of dollars, money that critics argued could have gone toward prevention instead of payouts. Judges issued warnings. Oversight reports cited repeated failures to correct known issues. Each lawsuit added another layer to the public record, another reminder that the past was not staying buried. Body cameras in the fight over evidence. One reform symbolized hope more than most: expanded use of body-worn cameras. The promise was accountability, an objective record of what really happened inside the jail. But implementation raised new questions. When cameras were activated, when they were not, who controlled the footage, how long it was stored. In some cases, missing or incomplete recordings fueled suspicion rather than trust. Technology alone, critics argued, could not fix a culture problem. Cameras could record behavior, but they couldn't change it. The voices we rarely hear. Outside the jail, families waited. They waited for court dates. They waited for phone calls. They waited for answers when something went wrong. Parents, siblings, partners, many described feeling powerless, trapped in a system that seemed impossible to reach or understand. When incidents occurred, families often learned details slowly, sometimes through media reports rather than official channels. This added another layer of trauma to an already painful experience. For them, LA County Jail was not an abstract policy debate. It was personal, a jail that mirrors society. As experts examined the system, a larger truth emerged. LA County Jail did not exist in isolation. It reflected failures far beyond its walls. A lack of affordable mental health care, inadequate housing, cycles of poverty and addiction, overburdened courts. The jail became the place where all these failures converged, a final stop for problems that had nowhere else to go. Reforming the jail without addressing what fed it, critics warned, would only treat the symptoms, not the disease. The future, decentralization or collapse. County leaders began exploring alternatives to mass incarceration. Pretrial diversion programs expanded. Some offenses were routed away from jail entirely. Mental health response teams were proposed as replacements for arrest in certain situations. If successful, these measures could dramatically reduce the jail population and change the very purpose of LA County Jail itself. But success was not guaranteed. Each reform faced resistance, budget battles, and political risk. And until alternatives were fully built, the jail remained the default solution, the question everyone avoids. As years passed, one uncomfortable question lingered. Was LA County Jail being asked to do something it was never meant to do and never could? A jail can detain. It can control. But can it heal? Can it replace hospitals, housing programs, and social services? The answer, many experts believe, is no. And yet, until society offers something better, the jail continues to absorb what the system can't handle. A legacy is still being written. LA County Jail is not finished writing its story. Reforms continue. Investigations remain active. New leadership rises, promising change while inheriting decades of damage. Inside the facilities, thousands of lives still move through steel doors every day. Some will leave with hope, others with anger, some with relief, others with scars that never fade. Final setup for what comes next. The largest jail system in America stands at a crossroads, pulled between reform and resistance, accountability and tradition, change and inertia. What happens next will shape not only Los Angeles, but the future of incarceration across the United States. Because when a system this large breaks or heals, the impact is felt far beyond its walls. The walls still stand. As the lights dim across Los Angeles, LA County Jail continues to operate. Quietly, constantly, relentlessly. Behind its walls, history isn't something written in books. It's something lived every single day. This system has held celebrities and strangers, the accused and forgotten, the sick and the desperate. It has been investigated, exposed, criticized, and promised reform more times than most people can count. And yet, it still stands, massive, complicated, and unfinished. LA County Jail is not just a place. It is a mirror, a reflection of how power is enforced, how justice is delayed, and how society responds when its safety nets fail. The question isn't whether this jail will change. The question is how many lives will pass through it before that change truly takes hold. Because long after the headlines fade, long after the cameras leave, the doors will still open, and they will still close behind someone else.